Trump believed he could humiliate Mexico without consequences. He believed he could threaten, pressure, punish, and walk away untouched, as if history did not exist, and as if economics had no memory. He believed Mexico would fold, that tariffs would break us, that threats would scare us, that sovereignty could be negotiated away with insults and ultimatums. He was wrong, and now he is paying the price with his own economy, with his own voters, and with the legacy he promised to build. What you are about to hear is not ideology, not nationalism, and not wishful thinking. It is the slow, measurable story of how karma finally caught up with the most arrogant man on the planet, and how every single threat against Mexico has come back to explode directly in his face. For years, Trump spoke as if Mexico were an object, not a nation, a problem to be managed, a punching bag to be used whenever he needed applause, a convenient enemy for domestic politics. He promised that Mexico would pay for everything. He promised tariffs would destroy our economy. He promised invasion, military force, humiliation. He promised dominance. What actually happened is the opposite. The tariffs are damaging the U.S. economy. American consumers are paying higher prices. Manufacturing is struggling, and the invasion never came because Trump discovered something he never understood in the first place. Mexico is not Venezuela. Mexico is not isolated. Mexico is not defenseless. Mexico is not alone. And you reap what you sow. Welcome. Today I'm going to show you step by step how karma is collecting on Donald Trump for everything he tried to do to Mexico, how his own policies are now working against him, and why the price he is paying is only the beginning. Let's start with memory, because memory is what Trump underestimated the most. How many times were we told Mexico was finished? How many times were we told Trump would destroy us? How many times did the media repeat that Mexico had no leverage, no options, no escape? And yet here we are more than a year later. Mexico is still standing. Our trade continues. Our sovereignty remains intact. And Trump is sinking under the weight of his own decisions. Let's move to the numbers, because numbers don't care about rhetoric. Who is really paying for Trump's tariffs? Not Mexico, not China, not foreign governments, American consumers. That is not a talking point. That is a conclusion drawn by Goldman Sachs, one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world. Their analysis shows that more than half of the cost of the tariffs is absorbed directly by Americans themselves. More than half. Trump promised tariffs would punish Mexico, force us to pay, and strengthen the U.S. economy. Instead, American importers pay more. American manufacturers pay more. And in the end, American families pay more every single time they shop. At grocery stores, at hardware stores, everywhere. Inflation in the United States closed above the Federal Reserve's target. And economists are clear about one thing. Tariffs are a major contributor. Trump promised to crush inflation. He promised lower prices. He promised relief. He lied. And those lies show up not in speeches, but on receipts. Donatella Principe from Fidelity explained it in simple terms. Tariffs generate inflation inside the United States. Importers absorb the shock first, and consumers absorb what remains. And here is the irony that makes this impossible to defend. Goods inflation is rising, while services inflation is falling. Exactly the opposite of what Trump promised when he sold tariffs as a miracle solution. Trump claimed tariffs would protect American workers. He claimed they would revive manufacturing. He claimed they would rebuild American strength. What they are actually doing is eroding purchasing power, raising costs for working families, and shrinking real wages. The same voters who trusted him are now paying the bill, and the manufacturing revival he promised, it never arrived. Manufacturing indices have slipped into contraction territory. That means less production, fewer jobs, and reduced investment. Why? Because American factories rely on imported components, because supply chains are integrated across borders, because you cannot tax inputs without increasing costs. Trump never understood that reality, and now millions of Americans are living with the consequences of that ignorance. But karma doesn't stop at economics. It moves into politics. Public opinion data shows that a majority of Americans now view Trump's return to the White House as a failure. Most believe he is focused on the wrong priorities. Most believe he has failed to address the cost of living. Most believe the economy has worsened under his leadership. Think about that. A majority of Americans believe Trump made their lives harder. And here is where karma becomes precise. The very policies Trump used to attack Mexico may now cost him Congress in the 2026 midterms. Financial analysts warned that tariffs are hitting working-class voters hardest. The same people Trump claimed to represent lose Congress, and Trump loses the ability to govern. You reap what you sow. Now, let's talk about the invasion threats, because this is where the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Trump spoke repeatedly about invading Mexico. He talked about troops, incursions, and military force. He framed it as inevitable. He framed it as strength. And what happened? Nothing. Not a single soldier crossed the border. Not a single incursion occurred. Why? Because Mexico said no. Calmly, firmly, publicly. Cooperation, yes. Foreign troops, no. And Trump had to accept it because he discovered a reality his rhetoric could not overcome. Mexico is the United States' largest trading partner. Nearly 1/5 of U.S. imports come from Mexico. Attack Mexico and you attack your own economy. There is no way around that math. Then came a moment that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. The FBI director traveled to Mexico not to threaten, not to issue demands, but to thank publicly. He acknowledged Mexican cooperation and accepted custody of major criminals captured by Mexican authorities. The same administration that once spoke of invasion now shows up expressing gratitude. That is not symbolism. That is power shifting. Trump believed he could insult Mexico without consequences. He was wrong. Courts are now reviewing the legality of his tariffs. Judges from across the ideological spectrum have expressed skepticism. If the courts strike them down, it will be a historic humiliation. A president whose entire economic strategy collapses under judicial review. Picture this clearly. A supermarket in Texas. A family looks at the price of tomatoes, avocados, and produce. Nearly all imported from Mexico. Prices are higher. Trump said Mexico would pay. They are paying. A factory in the Midwest cuts shifts because material costs have risen. Workers lose hours. Jobs disappear. And in the White House, advisors present numbers that don't align with the promises Trump made, while he blames everyone but himself. Mexico, meanwhile, adapted. Yes, there were impacts. Yes, some sectors felt pressure, but the trade agreement remains intact. Commerce continues. Mexican exports grew. Even Trump's own officials admitted that Mexico secured one of the most favorable trade arrangements in the world. Trump wanted to destroy the agreement. He said it was irrelevant. But American businesses stopped him. They understand something Trump never did. These economies are inseparable. You cannot tear one apart without damaging the other. Now midterm elections approach. The bill is coming due. Trump promised Mexico would pay. America is paying. He promised prosperity. He delivered inflation. He promised strength. He delivered instability. This is not revenge. This is arithmetic. This is consequence. This is karma. Mexico did not kneel. Mexico resisted. Mexico held its line without screaming, without escalating, without surrendering dignity. And Trump is now harvesting exactly what he planted. Every threat, every tariff, every insult, every lie. History will remember this moment not as the time Mexico broke, but as the time a U.S. president learned that you cannot bully your most important partner without eventually paying the price yourself.